chat to everyone, and yes, that's okay. Yeah, feel free to say hello in the chat and let us know where you're coming from, where you're joining us from today. I'm Ana Brazetite. I'm the Education Director at Christina T. Miller Sustainable Jewelry Consulting, where we provide strategy, guidance, and education on responsible sourcing and sustainability for the jewelry industry. If you'd like to find out more about the consultancy, you can check out our website. We'll be dropping links in the chat as we mention them. So welcome to the living room. This is our informal virtual hangout to support community and connection on issues related to responsible sourcing in jewelry. We cover different topics every month, and we love to hear from everyone. You can feel free to share any feedback you have about the sessions or any topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We have a form that you can drop us a quick message with. We'll put that in the chat as well. So thanks to everyone for showing up today, and thank you to those of you who were able to contribute with the pay what you want option. We're so happy to be able to provide these sessions, so thank you for helping make that possible. A little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this session. As usual, we will have it available on our website after the fact. So these videos do live in the public realm. Everyone's welcome to speak up, but just be mindful of that. When you're not speaking, please do stay muted. If you're private messaging, keep it kind. Let's keep everything respectful of participant space, personal space and privacy. Any questions you want to ask, any comments you have throughout, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll be keeping track of that so we can have a great Q&A session as well. Want to remind you to subscribe to our email list as well. This current session will be the last session of this year. So if you sign up to our newsletter, you'll be sure to get a reminder for the first session of 2022, which will be January 21st. So as a reminder, we're now keeping the living room sessions on the third Friday of every month to keep it consistent. So I think that's all for the introductions. I'll hand it over to Christina.
Excellent. We're still having people join, which is great. So I'm monitoring the admission process at the same time. So we would like to give a warm welcome to Carla Neefs. And Yao, I'm going to request that you pronounce your last name again for us, for my benefit. I think you're muted.
Opoku.
Thank you.
Yeah, Opoku, yes.
But before you said your middle name too.
Okay, so my name is Yao Britwum Opoku.
Britwum.
Yes.
I love it. Okay, thank you for that. So Carla and Yao are joining us from Solidaridad, as Ana mentioned, and they're here as our guests today to share, so internationally, we kind of do this little background on artisanal and small scale gold mining for this series. And for those of you that were able to join last time, we heard from Fair Mind, which you're familiar with. We heard from Zahabu Safi, which is a project of gold coming from DRC. And this time we're looking at gold coming from Ghana, and the organization Solidaridad that is in part supporting the development process of the mining area. And after we hear from Carla and Yao, we'll hear from Andrea Jose, who some of you may have met in the past because we've heard from her talking about the project in Peru, sourcing material from gold from a mercury-free gold mining community. So we're really looking forward to digging in. And something that's really interesting about this particular session that I really appreciated about Solidaridad's approach to participating is that you all had questions for the audience. Some of the things that you were hoping to garner from all of you who are joining the call that will help better inform how the gold from Ghana and through the Solidaridad project is going to reach jewelry communities or other purchasers of this material globally. So stay tuned for that part of the conversation because they have some things that they would like to get to know better from all of you. So for the sake of time, drop in the chat if you are not familiar with the concept of artisanal and small scale gold mining. Let us know in the chat. As I glance through the people that I'm seeing in the session, most of you are familiar. So I'll let the presentation by Solidaridad does cover some of the basics. So if you're not familiar, hold on, you'll get some of the basic information too through their presentation. So should we cue up the slides? All right.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, just 1 second. Okay. Oops, sorry about that. Was that working? Sorry, give me 1 second.
It was great.
I just lost it. I just had it open and I lost it. Oh no. Carla, why don't y'all give us a quick overview of what Solidaridad is as an organization while I'm getting the slides back.
Yeah, that's fine. Hello to all of you. My name is Carla. I'm working with Solidaridad in the Solidaridad Europe team. And our organization is working in the Global South and mainly. We also have a small office in North America, and our larger offices are in West Africa, where my colleague Yao is working, and in India, Asia. And we also have offices in Southern and Mid-America. And we are working mainly in agricultural commodities, but we are also working in textiles, leather, and minerals, mainly gold. We are a global civil society organization, and we are operating in more than 40 countries. We have a revenue of around 60 million euros per year. So we are able to help a lot of people in mainly rural areas. Of course, a lot of farmers we work with, but also with textile workers, leather workers, and small-scale gold miners. Yeah, we are very happy to be invited here. And I already met some of you through a meeting at the Ethical Goldsmiths organization. So I see also Alexandra here, who I met before, and some others of you. So happy to be back in the Northern Americas, and I gladly hand over to Yao to zoom in on the situation in Ghana.
All right, thank you, Carla, and also thanks for inviting us for this particular session. Really very privileged to be here. My name again is Yao Britwum Opoku. I'm a Ghanaian, and I work with Solidaridad West Africa. I'm based in our West Africa office, which is in Accra, Ghana. We have a number of projects running, mainly in cocoa and also in oil palm as well within the West Africa region. In the region, we are operating in Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, and also Ghana as well. We have a gold program which we started in 2012, and with the main objective of trying to improve on responsible practices in small-scale mines. But before I delve into what we do specifically with regards to our gold program, let me just give you a brief background on gold mining in Ghana. Small-scale gold mining actually existed as far back as the 4th century as a household economic activity. At the time, they were using typical hand tools to mine. And in 1933, large-scale gold mining was introduced. So then, at the time, the government then banned the activities of small-scale mining. In 1989, they came out with a regulation for the sector, which then, of course, permitted people to go into small-scale mining or artisanal mining at the time. So there were a number of regulations that were put in place, and we currently have what we call the Minerals and Mining Law, which regulates the small-scale mining sector, and also even the mining sector in general as well. So as I mentioned earlier on, when they started small-scale mining, they were mainly using hand tools to mine. So of course, the production was quite low. Actually, in 1989, the small-scale mining sector was producing just 2.2% of gold in the country. Currently, because the sector has evolved over the period, they are currently using heavy-duty equipment to mine. So, of course, that has also helped to increase production in the sector. So, mainly I think in the past few years, the small-scale gold mining sector is producing 1/3 of total gold produced in the country, which is huge. And because in Ghana, we're actually the largest producer of gold in Africa. We produce about 4.5 million ounces of gold every year. And with that, we have 1/3 of that coming from the small-scale mining sector, which makes it huge. You know, that means they produce about 1.5 million ounces of gold every year, which is huge. As part of the regulation of the sector, we've come out with sort of mining districts, whereby we do have the regulatory body situated in various parts of the country where we do have mining, trying to regulate the activities of small-scale miners. So the contribution of mining generally is about 5% of GDP and also 38% of exports, with gold contributing about 90% of that. As I mentioned earlier, Ghana is the largest producer of gold in Africa. And the local the benefits or mainly the benefits of mining or gold mining in Ghana has been mainly to do with employment and also improving on the local economy as well. So we do have a number of communities that do have mining being undertaken there. So generally, we see about 1 million people engaged in the sector, and considering a household size of about 4.5, that means they are benefiting about 4.5 million people generally in the country. And we do have a number of corporate social responsibility projects as well being implemented by some organizations, some of these mining companies as well. I think we missed some of the slides. I think so. If you can go back a bit. Sorry. Back again. Yes. So then we do have a very effective, well-documented, I would say, regulatory regime. We do have challenges with that as well, especially to do with the enforcement of some of the laws and regulations. The government, in trying to promote small-scale mining, has set up regional and district offices for the Minerals Commission, which is the regulatory body for small-scale mining in the country. We do also have the Ghana National Association of Small-Scale Miners, which is more of a producer organization, umbrella organization, trying to ensure that miners do benefit from whatever activity they engage themselves in. It's also to ensure decent work within the mining space as well. And there's been some projects over the years to ensure sort of promoting the sector. So there's been some capacity building projects. There's been mercury abatement projects, to the extent that also we do have some equipment being rented out to small-scale mines for them to use for their mining activities, some also on high purchase basis, and also not forgetting alternative livelihoods within the mining communities as well. Gold trading, of course, is also key. We have what we call the Precious Minerals Marketing Corporation, which is in charge of trading of gold in Ghana. So they give licenses to gold traders and also exporters in order to ensure that they support producers as well within the mining sector. Next slide, please. So I think we missed one slide, I think. Okay,
All right.
so the sector, of course, has some challenges. The major one is to do with illegal mining, which is a big challenge for us as a country. We generally have just about 20% of small-scale mines licensed. So we have lots of illegal miners, and the government is trying to come out with some sort of strategies to address that. There's also some form of LSM or large-scale mines, and also small-scale miners also having some form of conflict, mainly to do with small-scale miners encroaching on the concessions of large-scale mines. And that is currently also being addressed with the support of the governmental institutions as well. Other challenges include environmental impacts, looking at degraded lands and also polluted water bodies, uncontrolled use of mercury, and also looking at also health and safety of workers, because some of them use explosives to mine. And of course, also some of them do not protect themselves whilst working as well. So these are some of the key challenges that we do face in the small-scale mining sector in Ghana. Next slide, please.
Did it switch?
Looks stuck, like looks stuck between two slides or something.
Oh no.
Okay, but before the next slide comes up, so as an organization, how do we address some of these challenges? In 2012, we came out with what we call the Gold Program, looking at trying to promote responsible practices in small-scale mines in the country. So that's the main objective of the Gold Program, and also ensuring that the activities of small-scale miners do not have a negative impact on them and also on the environment as well. So basically, that's what we do, and also trying to improve on the livelihoods of small-scale miners. So then we came out with a Gold Program to ensure that we try to address some of these challenges within the small-scale mining sector. We've had some successes over the period. We've had a number of mines that we've supported to ensure production of responsible gold or to adopt responsible practice on the mine sites. We initially started using the Fair Mine Standard, which tries to promote, of course, responsible practices in small-scale mines, looking at key areas such as environmental management, looking at health and safety of the workers as well, looking at responsible use of mercury, and also even transitioning to mercury-free processing technologies as well. And looking at even labor conditions, especially gender issues as well within the mine sites and also in the mining communities. So generally, we have 4 key areas that we look out for, we have interventions in. And the first is looking at good practices on the mine sites and trying to build the capacity of the miners to produce gold responsibly. We also have another component looking at service providers. How do we support service providers to provide services that will help ensure responsible practices in the mines as well? And also we do have one key area looking at community interventions. How do we also support mining communities to develop? And lastly, looking at policy influencing, which for us is key, because if we want to really sustain our activities, we need to influence policy for government to come out with policies that will help promote responsible practices in small-scale mines. So basically, that's what we do as an organization to support production of responsible gold within the small-scale mining sector in Ghana. So for us, okay, so going forward, what do we want to do? Currently, we've adopted the craft code, which is based on the OECD due diligence guidance. So we want the government to adopt this as a national standard that can then be used to assess mines and ensure that they meet the requirements of the craft or of the OECD due diligence guidance as well. So we want to also partner with relevant institutions and to support the sector. And we've had a number of partnerships over the years. mainly from the Dutch government, and also we've had some partnership from private companies as well, mining companies as well, to support our activities. We also are currently designing an innovative sourcing model for ASM gold, because we think that looking at the huge volumes of gold that comes from the sector, if we are able to support the miners to produce gold responsibly, then of course we can then be able to link them to the formal markets, to ensure that the downstream actors also are able to source responsible gold from the small-scale mining sector. So basically, there's a plan for us for the next few years, I must say. So we're looking at very good partnerships to ensure that we'll be able to meet our objectives. I'll now hand over to Carla to continue from here.
Yes, thank you, Yao. I would like to dive a little bit deeper into the sourcing question, because what we currently see in the market is, in fact, there are two options available. The one is sourcing through the regular channels, and the refiners that are active in the world markets. There's a lot of wholesalers who buy their gold through these refiners, and they offer their materials to the jewelers. When we look at the impact level of this type of gold, you are quite sure that you are having the risk of sourcing illegal ASM gold. It can be touched by money laundering, it can be touched by criminal groups. There is no way in the regular channels to have solid checks on the origin and the way it is sourced. What I always find very interesting is that all statistics show that from all the mined materials that come into the market globally, we know that 20% of it is originating from ASM sources. When you ask refiners or large gold buyers, is there any ASM sourced gold in your supply chain? They all say no, except for the few that have some fair mined or fair trade gold in their supply chain. So it's very interesting. The phenomenon is there. It is not recognized at all, but we all know it is there. This also resonates the way that there is communicated about ASM gold. There's simply denial and denial of having this type of sources into their supply chains. Of course, it comes into the market at a regular price. There's no additional fees involved. And there's a lot of challenges associated with it, especially for the artisanal and small-scale gold mines themselves. They have great difficulty entering the formal markets. How can they prove that they are legitimate producers? How can they enter the formal trading channels? How can they get access to not only markets, but also pre-financing, capital, etc.? There is an alternative at the current marketplace, and it is offered by the certification schemes of fair trade and fair mind. In these schemes, the small-scale miners get rewarded when they have achieved the requirements of the certificates. So there is requirements regarding environmental responsibilities, social responsibilities, and there are associated audits that prove mines are compliant with these requirements. So the communications on this type of gold are very much facilitated by the certification schemes. And sometimes there's also shed a light on some specific mines or projects that are taking place. There is an additional fee associated with this type of gold. It is a product fee. And when you pay like 12 to 15% extra, you can communicate on the certification requirements that you produce your jewelry with. There are also several challenges associated with the certified gold. What we see in the field that there's a very low level of uptake by artisanal and small scale mines. I think this has to do a lot with the following causes. It takes the mines a lot of time and investments. Depending on their starting situation, it can take up to years before they are able to achieve the requirements of the certification. This is actually quite demotivating for the mines. When they have succeeded in getting the certification, there is no guaranteed offtake at a premium price. They need to find their own off-takers, their own market. So what we also see in the field that there are mines that have achieved the certification level, and then the next year they don't renew their certification because they don't succeed in finding a buyer. So we, together with some other partners like the Impact Facility and Fairphone, we have been discussing these problems, and we have come up now with a new sourcing model. If you could go to the next slide. And I would like to check with you the appetite you would have for this new sourcing model. What we built is actually comparable to the green energy model. So what we are aiming for is to enter responsible small-scale gold into the market. So it's with green energy, you get your energy from the socket, and it's not necessarily the windmill produced energy that you get out of your specific socket, but it is entered into the system. And you pay an additional fee for this green energy to enter into the system. And in fact, what we are now trying to build for small-scale gold is based on the same system. We try to enter the gold into the system with checks and balances in the vulnerable part of the supply chain. Because we all know that when you speak about small-scale mining, there's a lot of risks involved. There can be entered smuggled gold, there can be entered gold from mines that are not committed to making responsible mining practices. So you need to secure that part of the supply chain, actually from the mines to the exporter up to the refiner. And from there, it is entered into the system, and you can work with a book and claim system. The mines that are in such programs, they are committed to making improvements. So they are not on the level of responsible mining yet. It can take them years, but they have made the commitment to work towards it. And they are being checked and monitored each time to see if they live up to their commitments. With this system being in place, we think all supply chain actors can support such system. The way it could be supported is by providing pre-financing money for the mines to be able to make their investments. It could alternatively be done exactly like we do with green energy, pay a premium. And with this premium, you pay for traceability system and you pay for continuation of projects to support the mines to achieve improvements. But maybe some of you have other ideas on how to support the artisanal and small-scale mines to get their entrance into the system of the gold markets. Well, I think this is my part of the presentation, and I would be really curious to learn from you how you would reflect on such a sourcing system and if you see possibilities to contribute to it.
Great, thank you for that presentation, and my apologies if I'm just having all sorts of technical troubles today, but thank you for bearing with me, and yeah, that great explanation of your work. I think that personally, I'd love to, well, we definitely have plenty of questions for you two, and we'll get to audience questions as well. But I wanted to kind of expand a little bit on some of the things you mentioned in the presentation just now. So what I think is an important thing to touch on so that everybody here who's new to your work can understand is the difference between the certification schemes that exist and the craft code, right? So if you could tell us a little bit about what craft code is compared to the Fair Mine and Fair Trade certifications, and why the craft code is more favorable in the area that you are working in.
Yeah, I think this one is best addressed by you.
No problem. Yes. So initially, we started using the Fair Mine standard as a tool to help promote responsible practices on the mine sites. We tried that in a number of mines. It usually took about 3 years for the mines to get close to the certification. It also involved huge investments as well. And the miners were not recognized for the little effort that they put in, let's say, the first 6 months. So you can do a number of things in the first 6 months, but of course you will not be recognized for that because you do not have the certification. So you can only be recognized after you've been given the certification. So that was quite challenging. So miners were a bit demoralized. So they were not really very much interested in pursuing the Fair Mine standard. So then we, together with Alliance for Responsible Mining, came out with what we call the craft code. The craft code, the idea behind the craft code is that it's a progressive tool, but it looks at minimum requirements. So basically looks at the OECD due diligence guidance, looking at the risk within that and trying to address those risks using the craft code. So the craft code is a tool that is different from the Fair Mine standard. The Fair Mine standard is a certification. The craft code helps ensures that you meet the requirements of formal markets mainly. So looking at basic requirements of the downstream actors and also looking at the OECD due diligence guidance as well. And also key within that is to do with the national regulations as well. So it combines the national regulations and also the OECD due diligence guidance and also the requirements of downstream actors as well. So once you meet the minimum requirements, you can then start exporting your gold to some of the downstream actors. And whilst doing that, continue to improve on your practices because it's a progressive tool. So then one example is in the first 6 months, for instance, you can start using mercury responsibly. So you are still using mercury, all right, but you are doing that responsibly. So it's not having a negative impact on your workers or on the environment as well. With that, once you meet the other requirements as well, you can still export your gold to the downstream actors formally. You should have a plan in place to be able to then transition from the use of mercury to mercury-free processing technologies. So that in the next, let's say 1 year to 1.5 years, you then you can then come out with or procure a mercury-free processing equipment. Then your gold will be mercury-free. So that is the plan for that. So within the period you are recognized, within the period that you start the craft, you are recognized as producing gold responsibly. but that's not the end game. You have to continue to improve on your practices to be able to get to a level whereby you've been able to meet all the requirements in the craft. So that's the main difference between the fair mine standard and the craft code. And we've realized that most mines are very much interested in the craft code. And because in some countries, especially countries that do not really have conflicts, it's very easy for you to get the craft code, or to meet the requirements of the craft code. So then you can then start exporting your gold formally and also legally. But before then, hitherto it was difficult for you to do that because, of course, you did not have the fair mine certification. That was mainly the only certification tools at the time that would then prove that you are producing gold responsibly. So that's the main difference between the craft code and the fair mine standard. Yeah.
Great,
Carla, do you want to add something? Sorry.
Yeah, can I ask a quick follow-up about that? So does it mean that the government of Ghana recognizes craft code as a component of legal, artisanal and small scale gold mining? Like, has it become part of the national legal structure around artisanal mining?
Not yet. So you can see from our slide on the way forward that that's where we are pushing. That's what we're pushing currently, trying to engage with policymakers to see this as more of a national standard. And you may be aware that the craft code is more of a global thing. It's a bit generic. So then, and it's an open source code. So then countries or governments can then localize that within their context. CSOs like Solidaridad, for instance, also localize that within our context as well and use that to assess mines. So that for us is our sustainability strategy. How do we influence policy for government, for instance, to adopt the craft code as more of a national thing? Because generally over the years, of course, we do have national regulations and we do have international ones as well, but we realize that in our national regulation, we do not have some of the international requirements. So the plan then is how do we then incorporate the international requirements within the national regulations as well? So that for us is key. That's what we're currently working on to ensure that we see the government sees the craft as more of a national thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. So there was a question, a couple questions in the chat already. Let's see. Mostly focusing on traceability, right? So we have a question from Jenna, who's asking about how you're managing the traceability as soon as it goes to the refiner. So I have a feeling this is kind of what you were speaking to, Carla, with kind of being similar to the green energy model. But maybe you could just tell us a bit more about how y'all are considering all of that. I know that the slide mentioned Minex as well for the beginning part of that journey. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that is referring to, and then expand a little bit more, because the question is, don't we lose traceability as soon as the gold goes to the refiner, right? So let's just talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's a very logical question, because indeed, as soon as the gold reaches the refiner, you lose physical traceability. And I think that is one of the big differences with the certification schemes, because they offer a full physical traceability with special refiners that are asked to keep the certified gold separate and lead it physically to you as an end user for jewelry. In our model, we say, okay, let's focus on entering the gold into the system. Let's acknowledge the current system of weight accounts with refiners. I'm not sure if you are all familiar with that, but basically weight accounts means that the gold doesn't need to travel physically from one refiner to the other, but you can sort of book it on and book it off on your account. And then the gold goes to a customer that is most nearby the refiner that is booking the gold on and sells it to the off-taker. What we do recognize is that the upstream part of the supply chain is a vulnerable part, because there you have the mines. It's all very small scale, it's small volumes. There are sometimes legitimate trading channels, sometimes informal trading channels, and it's difficult to make the distinction if you do not have physical traceability. So what we propose is, in what we call the vulnerable part of the supply chain, to put their physical traceability. For that, we are partnering with Minex, and in some countries with other partners. But for Ghana, we partner with Minex. And that is a company that offers traceability. So they offer the traceability partly physically, partly digital, for example, with satellite monitoring. Because if you have full physical monitored traceability, you need to have one person on site on all these smaller mine sites, which makes it extremely expensive. So their business model is to generate some digital inclusions whereby the traceability is getting cheaper. So currently, Minex is a startup company. So we are collaborating with them to refine and improve their model for traceability, and also find a payable system to make it work. So in the new model, we make a clear distinction between the part that is physically traceable and that is not physically traceable.
I see, yeah.
That is giving a bit more clarity.
Yeah, that does definitely help. Another thing that's coming up currently, for example, Bob Goodman was asking what would be the cost of pre-financing? Is 5% a big enough premium? Which kind of leads into something that comes up kind of often, I think, for all of us here, is this question of premiums in general, right? Like, what is enough of a premium? What is too much of a premium? How do we know that that premium is really benefiting the communities, right? So maybe if you could touch on that for us as well.
Yes, it's a spot on question, because that indeed is a very difficult issue. We have just been developing this model, and actually we are still getting on the details. But what we suggest for now is that in the coming 3 years, we have several pilots with introducing this specific model. We have a few projects. We have projects in Ghana, we have projects in East Africa. And for each of these projects, we would like to establish a supply chain. And we would like to have jewelers that commit themselves to off-taking some of this gold. And for now, we set the percentage at 5%, because we think with that percentage, we can cover traceability and we can cover a contribution to the ASM supporting programs. What we will do in that 3-year period is that we monitor as well the financial aspects as the impact. And after this period of 3 years, we will report fully transparent to all people and companies involved in the supply chain on the results. We will have a third-party financial audit because we think that is, needs to be totally secured, ensured as much as possible. And we will have impact monitoring and reporting on the impact. Depending on the off-takers' wishes, we could also make that one third-party verified. But of course, that will increase costs a bit. But anyway, we are open to suggestions on that part. But that is what you could expect as an off-take.
I really appreciate the level of detail that you're laying all of this out in. I think it helps everyone understand where various areas are of where costs are incurred and why at the end there is, I'm gonna do something really funny, but I just realized my computer wasn't plugged in. Sorry about that. I don't want the whole thing to die while I do that. But it's really helpful the way that you're explaining the big picture. And so I want to assure some of the folks that are asking further questions about premium and markups and so on. Let's come back to that because it also applies to the work that Andrea has been doing in Peru. You know, it's another kind of model to look at. So I think for the moment, let's put on pause the presentation from Solidaridad. We're going to hear from Andrea, and then we will bring some of these questions that are useful feedback for all parties back into the conversation. So Andrea, why don't you introduce us to the project that you've been working on? Keep in mind for everyone, Andrea is a jeweler, so we're trying to, sort of adjust the points of view that are coming to this conversation and how you can participate in being a change maker. So Andrea, tell us a little bit about what you've been working on.
Well, hello everyone. Really pleased to be here with you. And yes, indeed, I would like to make this a really kind of more like an intimate conversation to tell you a bit more about my stories and how I ended up working with mercury-free gold and this very beautiful project at the Amazon Rainforest, which started in collaboration with the NGO Pure Earth. And so, well, basically, I am from Peru, and I have been used to be traveling around the country, and Peru is a mining country, so most of the main economic activities here is mining. So that's what you can see when you travel around the country. So in my professional experience, I was working with in social development for mining corporations, for mining companies. And whilst also I was kind of learning jewelry techniques with master artisans. So jewelry, I was always fascinated by jewelry since a really young age, and this kind of connection of traveling and being fascinated by jewelry, by the craft itself, and also working with the mines here in Peru, kind of gave me a bit of the vision about what's happening in the full value chain. So as I grew older, I kind of started developing this purpose, and I really like I was given this question about how this journey has started, and it's actually a journey to venture into what sustainability and how to bring it into my work. So, well, when I was kind of working, I always knew that I had to make a sustainable model for my jewelry business because I thought that was the thing to do, the right thing to do. First, because I was working with the craft people and I knew I learned with them and I knew they had to be kind of included. But at the same time, I noticed kind of this gap that there is, between all the kind of the mining projects and the mining activity, which is really not linked to the craft area. And I was always thinking like, why? I mean, maybe there is something that we can work on and improve this. So basically, I started collaborating with the NGO Pure Earth years ago. And when I met them, I knew they had a project ongoing to clean the communities, the mining communities, from mercury. And so that's when the kind of journey towards the mining activity and the use of mercury started to be linked. So by this moment, as I founded my company, this has been like nearly 6 years ago. And as I mentioned, I always wanted to kind of create a sustainable model for jewelry. So one of the first things we did here in my company was to become a B Corp certified. And I mentioned this because I will go to this point afterwards. So as I have been kind of growing with the company and taking me to this journey, I have been the last 2 years in London doing a research in jewelry and how to create a sustainable model for jewelry. And when you are living kind of in Peru, the type of news that you are kind of used to see are more or less linked to kind of the illegal mining activities in the Amazon rainforest. And that's what people have got in their minds, kind of illegal mining activity and destruction. And if you mention here in Peru, at least locally, you know, working with the gold in the Amazon, that's illegal, you know, don't even dare to do that. But Pure Earth started a project years ago, like 3 years ago, kind of reforesting a mining concession. And I thought that was a great idea because that was a way kind of to do the opposite of what actually was happening in the area. And this is kind of how this adventure started, because then, as I already knew, as I kind of got in touch and said, you see, I really want to start kind of giving that other, I don't know, just be linked it directly, understand directly what's happening there in the Amazon rainforest with the mining activity, and see if maybe there is one miner that is able to do it properly. If there is only one miner that we can maybe work with and make things right, you know, then we will have kind of a leader that will also help the other communities to kind of start working with the mercury, wanting to reforest, etc. So this is how it began. It was in 2019, so I traveled and I met Don Pedro. Don Pedro was the first miner trained by Pure Earth in mercury-free mining practices in the Amazon rainforest. I mentioned Amazon rainforest because, as you know, well, Christina is an expert in this matter about the Amazon rainforest. It's a very fragile ecosystem. And fortunately, it has been gifted by many, many resources, plenty. And one of these ones is gold. So, of course, as any other resource that is in the planet, we can use it, but I do think that we have to use it responsibly. And if we want to work with it, it has to be responsibly. This is the way kind of we take care of the planet, but we also generate a positive impact in people's lives. So I traveled and I met Don Pedro, and we had this very interesting exchange of knowledge and skills. Because as I am a jewelry designer, I'm a maker as well. Kind of the miner he has never been linked directly, kind of, to the jewelry, to the jewelers, to the ones that possibly may consume the material that he produces. So basically, we just exchanged, you know, skills. He taught me how to do the mining without using mercury, using the shaking tables. He showed me all this process, and afterwards I told him, well, maybe now we have to process this, and I just explained to him and his miners how to kind of smelt the gold, how to make it look beautiful into gold bars. So we did that there in the Amazon rainforest with the few things we had on hand. It was a really nice adventure. But after that, I realized, well, I mean, we are just, you know, exchanging knowledge. We are just, you know, connecting. So that's what we did. We are just connecting those two sides of the value chain that sometimes tend to be really kind of disconnected, because all the things that Carla has mentioned to us, you see, there is like a lot of things going on in this complicated gold value chain worldwide. And just sometimes to make it simpler, make the things really like more worthy or like just simpler. So while working with him, we have been partnering like since 2019 to start working with the gold that he produces. So I am a studio-based jewelry company. So we are not kind of managing like big operations, but we work on bespoke projects for companies and people that want to kind of have unique heirlooms, unique jewelry pieces, or just simple collections. So it's easier for us kind of to source the quantities directly to the miners. So we have had like many logistical challenges. I will gladly ask. I will really recite all the questions that you may have because it has been really challenging, particularly because the Amazon rainforest is quite far away from where I'm based, Lima, which is the capital, and in Peru. And so logistical challenges have been plenty. And we have learned also a lot of things in the process because most of the gold mining activity in the Amazon rainforest is not probably legally or formal. And there are other challenges that I think there's plenty of opportunities kind of to build other business models as the one that Carla has mentioned, mining. I think it's amazing what these opportunities can bring also to miners here. To kind of assure the traceability. So kind of the work I've been doing is through partnerships and doing that direct connection with the miners locally, driven basically by this idea of wanting to really generate a positive impact here, but also connect, just make it simpler for us jewelers to source responsibly. Also, I am a certified fair mine company, so I have been used to kind of purchase the gold directly from the mine in Peru, from the certified fair mine facilities here in, sorry, not facilities, the certified mining companies here. So I also kind of knew all the process of directly purchasing the gold. In this case, because I am a studio jewelry, we are not using any refinery processes. We are doing it in-house, and that is working for us great. For now, let's see. A lot of people have talked to me in London or in the UK that's really not the usual thing, but for us it is working fine because we do test our material, the purity, so that allows us to know how and what are we purchasing. And this is more or less a bit about how this journey towards sourcing the mercury-free gold from the Amazon has come through. And the other point, which is quite interesting as well, is that lately we have been just working directly also with Pure Earth to go and train more miners in smelting techniques, in how they can, transform their gold powder, which is that what we obtain when we work without mercury. It's just a simple gold powder, which is very hard to commercialize because it's harder, it's easier that it gets lost, and it's also not well distinguished here. At least people doesn't know what it is. So the miners, with this little training that we give them to process it locally in their own facilities and have like their own workshop and space to process the gold and be able then to commercialize it, it's easier for them. And even now they are interested in learning jewelry. So I think much of this kind of type of work that I've been doing is really based in collaboration, in partnership, and in kind of trying to understand which were the gaps there for them. What was it happening that they were not like being able to sell their gold to other places? And we have also, for example, the news that some of the miners that we just have been training, they have been reached out by other companies here in Lima to sell the gold. So they are happy because now they know how to kind of present it, prepare the presentation, be able to sell it in a small quantity. But of course, this is how we start with this type of small scale mining initiative. And and then they can continue to kind of keep growing. And that's more or less kind of the type of work. And luckily, the one thing that I will just add about being a big corporation is that this certification is quite interesting because it's really general about our company. So they measure the volume that we sell and the volumes that we purchase from certified or, you know, responsible sources. So we have to pass an auditing process where we can really give all the information. So it's reviewed. So our company kind of, the whole transparency of the company is given to the Big Corp auditing team. And I do think this is very important for us because it also raises our own standards as a jewelry company to kind of keep up everything, you know, always in order. And indeed, like the majority or more or less like the 100% of what we buy is from responsible mining sources. And this is great. So in this way, we can also assure to our clients that we have a third party auditing also our activities and kind of trying to measure the impact that we as a jewelry business is trying to create. And I also believe that this certification has been really useful for us kind of to create new and better practices, which we can now share with other jewelers and jewelry companies which are interested in kind of venturing into this journey of sustainable sourcing, responsible sourcing, and most of all kind of creating better impact and improving the livelihoods of the miners, the mining communities with whom we work with. So yes, any questions you'd like to know, I'm very happy to hear.
So much, Andrea. There are comments about how inspiring your particular story is. It also makes me note that B Corp certification might be an interesting living room session in the future. You know, it would be something that people might want to know more about. There are only a few jewelry brands that have B Corp certification globally. So it's an interesting one to make note of. So looking a little bit at the similarities and differences between what we're hearing from Yao and Carla and then Andrea, the similarities are, you know, working with mining communities for whom sometimes the existing standard isn't necessarily a fit. And so how do you adjust and amend the way that you work to be able to accept material that isn't necessarily certified? So you're in part of what Solidaridad would like to know, and what Andrea has already worked on for her own business, is what are you willing to accept when you don't have certified material as an option? So it would be good to have some more questions coming in around all of that. One that I think applies to everyone, and one clarification I would like to make, and I know it was either Carla or Yao mentioned it, that craft code came in part about by several organizations who work with artisanal miners. Solidaridad included, the Alliance for Responsible Mining included, who is the creator of the Fair Mine certification. And they immediately, when launching Fair Mine, knew from the outset that it was only going to be able to be achievable by a limited number of mine sites, right? And so very early on, they were working on these alternatives. And it's great to know a little bit of the history there from Carla and Yao, how those all fit into place, trying to understand where miners who are at a different level, but interested in participating, what they need in order to participate in these systems. One of the questions that came in earlier that I don't know that we necessarily cleared up, I'm going to go back to Bob, was there's a difference between the premium paid, and so I'm curious, this is sort of a little bit for everyone here. The premium that's paid by the time the jeweler is making a purchase of material. So premium, whether it's defined by fair trade or fair mind, or premium because it is the expectation, it is necessary to pay a bit of a higher fee for the material because of all the hoops that the various players have had to jump through to be able to bring it to market. What Bob was asking was more, if you want to pre-finance an organization, if you want to commit, and so I'm curious, Andrea, if you're doing this, if you want to support a mining community to participate in programs like this, how much financing is necessary to float the work that is required in order to participate in these various schemes? So trying to understand, there's a difference between ensuring that the miners have cash flow on their material versus at the other end where they're having, where you're making a purchase of their material. So we were talking about two different things. I know for sure that Solidaridad has dealt with this. And I'm certain, kind of, Andrea, you may have had conversations with the mining communities too. How can you get them on board early? So first to Solidaridad, how do you deal with the fact that the miners require that investment from their partners in order sometimes to commit to the process? And Yao or Carla, you can decide who's best to speak to that.
You want to go, Yao, or what do you prefer?
Let me start then. Okay, so we have two different strategies. Still about to pilot them. The first is upfront investment in the mine, whereby we've assessed some of the mines to know their equipment needs, for instance. Because over the years, one of the major challenges that the mines are facing is to do with access to finance. And generally also they use the monies to buy equipment for their operations. So the first is upfront investment in the mine, committing them to sell their gold to you, and also they paying back the loan as well within a period. So that's one aspect of it. The next is to do with premium, which of course we can't as an organization decide on that. It usually comes from those who are buying the gold. So that is also something that we currently also discussing. That I think we just had a question on that, 5%, 10%, etc., which is fair. So these are the two models that we have in place to support the mines, because in most cases, of course, they need some form of investment to improve on their practices. Yeah, Carla, would you like to add something to it?
I think this is very well explained, and what you sometimes also see in the discussion is when is the mine getting paid, right? So you as a buyer, you pay basically the wholesaler or maybe directly the refiner, but when is your money being sorry, I missed the English word, being given to the mine. What might work, I think, in accommodating the model that Yao was giving for pre-financing and making investments, is that a jeweler estimates his annual or her annual volume and already pays for that volume beforehand. Gold is very valuable. So yeah, already with pre-financing 1 kilogram of gold, you could make a reasonable investment in a mine. I think these kind of models are very challenging because they are based on trust. And I think for smaller jewelers, it would be too challenging. But imagine larger brands with larger volumes of gold. I think they could part of their annual uptake of gold, they could finance before. and thus unlocking capital for small-scale mines.
Thanks. There's a follow-up question before we go to Alice's question. Andrea, I'm curious for you, your role, so there was already a program in place with the goal of encouraging miners to reforest land that they had been mining in the Amazon rainforest. And they had already been selling their gold to any number of buyers. And you came in with a new way of thinking, a different sort of opportunity. So, without details that, are about your business or something, but how did you negotiate an opportunity to work with you versus the conventional way that they had been making money off of their gold product?
Great. I think this is a great question because indeed, it's really, honestly, it's easier for the miners to sell locally to the gold shops located there. Pretty easy because the gold shops, they, of course, purchase gold from all the different miners. It doesn't matter if it's legal, illegal, formal, it doesn't matter. They just purchase the gold, put it together and sell it. So for miners, it's really easier, this process. But in my case, what I was I think it was very important to go there with the idea of kind of helping them with what they need. So that's what kind of I'm trying to do as a sort of partnership. You see, instead of just working as separated parts of the value chain, trying to really bond together with the miner and understand, because sometimes they just require maybe even, if it's not logistical help, it might be administrative help, but all these kind of things that we are able kind of to also give them, that they will be useful for them. But of course, we pay more than the local shops. This is for certain. Because this is the way they can also understand that we appreciate more the effort that they are doing in taking care, A, from the environment, and B, also from using the mercury and polluting. But I think it is these two parts together. It's, of course, the monetary part, but also like the part of the human part of really understanding what the miners might be needing, and trying to see how we can just support them as supporting any other partner, as kind of making that part of your own business, because it actually is. I think this would be my answer.
No, that's excellent. That makes sense. And so in continuation of that, the question from Alice in the chat is more an idea than a question about, how, so it's this, we love the problem solving, and this is, we're in a state of the world right now where we have to accept that we have big problems in our hand, and so it requires all of our creativity. So wherever you have ideas, put them out there. You never know if they're going to stick or not. But so one of the ideas is, can we kind of aggregate material from a particular source or a particular region and be able to gather it up until there's enough, and then move it to a refinery in mass so that you can still have origin traceability and a way to support as a collective, is kind of my understanding of Alice's point. Maybe this would be a question for Carla and Yao.
Okay, so we do already have aggregators in place in Ghana currently. Our approach in the past few months had been that we are engaging with a number of traders who are already in the space, but we specifically engaging with those who are interested in craft gold. So then we usually operate with or work with mines that produce at least 2 kg of gold every month. So that's one of the criteria for selection of mines that we work with, because of course we need the volumes as well. So then if, let's say, we have 5 mines in the particular area and we have a trader who is ready to work with us with regards to the craft, then they will buy the gold from the mines, aggregate that before exporting. So we already have that in place. So it's very easy to do that once we have craft compliant gold. Yeah.
And then there's another question coming up that has to do, in a way, it's like, how is it marketed? So this goes back to kind of some of the questions that Solidaridad you wanted to hear from this community. What is it that you would want? So in a way, Will, you kind of put both ideas in one post. So in the chat, is the hope that gold could be bought as craft gold? Or is it that gold be sourced as single origin while still meeting the legal formal export regulations, or to infuse the market with more craft gold, not in a separate gold to buy from refiners? So you mix together like a whole number of things. So from, in other words, jewelers are wondering, what can I say about this material once I have it? Right? What do I get to say? Does it have a label? Does it have a claim? Is there something I can say about all my effort? So what can you say there? And then is the model that Solidaridad is talking about, I'm even wondering if for this particular audience, if that mass balancing is the word that I have evolved to understand. You mentioned weighted accounting. But the way the energy system works, I can buy green energy here, and then there's the coal mine. It all comes into the same boat. I have committed to green energy. They buy it for me, but they don't give me green energy out of my outlet. The gold is the same. The refiner could be buying gold from all these different areas. I know I invested in responsible ASM gold. I paid extra. The gold goes into the system. In the end, I can say this year I spent X amount supporting the development of this many grams or this many kilos of responsible ASM gold. That's what my claim is. So have you all worked that out at all? Have you addressed that, or is that the kind of feedback you want from a jewelry community? Solidaridad first.
Well, I think you give a pretty good picture of how the system would work. And communication-wise, because that is, in fact, also the question, like, what can you communicate to your customers? You can communicate on the project level. And so we have projects, and also other NGOs could have projects. Don't get me wrong. I think also other NGOs working with ASM mines could engage in this kind of system. And then you can communicate at the project level where a certain amount of mines are engaged in the projects. And we can provide you with materials on the mines, on the projects, on the improvements they make, because we monitor the improvements on impact level. So the claim that you give is that you support projects from a certain set of NGOs who work with a craft model or a model like craft. Fair Trade has the Fair Trade Step Up model. There's the impact escalator. There's different type of models because everyone is facing now the same problems and is getting into the same type of solutions. So I think there is room in the market to have this type of branding, which is very similar to the green energy branding. And we could provide you with communication materials from the mine level and the project level to substantiate that kind of claim.
Thank you. That you added to what I was asking about. Andrea, have you found that
Yes.
your you're doing bespoke, but you're also supplying jewelry to retailers. Are you finding that they have particular expectations of the information that you can provide about the gold coming from these areas, or what are you finding? Where are the goalposts? We'll accept this, but we won't accept this, or we want this proof, but we don't need this. What are you finding?
So the way we are working, I mean, all the gold that we source, we do assure that it's mercury-free gold. So in terms of our business strategy, we're working towards the elimination of mercury. And certainly any gold that we purchase is mercury-free. Either it is fair mined, it's eco gold, or if it is gold, the gold from the Amazon rainforest, it's going to be mercury-free. So this is kind of the statement, the way we speak about the material that we use. But we also speak that we definitely contribute towards the reforestation, because that's what we also do. We do contribute annually for the reforestation of the Amazon rainforest. So this is kind of the two types of information that we normally give to companies, business, and clients. And the other thing that we are working like in terms of more like bespoke, I do think it's very interesting what is being spoken in the chat about doing these campaigns and kind of promoting conscious consumption. One thing we do is allow the customer to choose from which mine they want their gold. So we work with a couple of mines here, now 3 mines, sorry. So so we give them the option to choose this one, this one, this one. Which one do you prefer? And we speak the story about each mine, how it is, and normally they take the decision. And I think this is very important because they are becoming absolutely aware, and they are kind of trying to understand and dig more into the detail of their decision. So, and also for retailers, in this case, we have been working with the gold from the Amazon as well. And it's an amazing story because they want to help towards that particular cause. They want that the products that they use go directly to this area. So this is how we've been working towards that.
Thank you. There's still a little more dialogue going on about, what really qualifies, what is really able, what what can you really communicate, at the consumer level? So when it's so fascinating when we have these stories where we can go right now, via, we don't have a miner on the phone, but we can go vicariously through Yao and Carla and Andrea direct to miners. And there are a variety of ways which we can purchase their material in legitimate ways at a little bit of a higher price to signal the desire for these kinds of practices. And then it works its way through the supply chain. It can come to us in any variety of ways. So ultimately, what is it that you all want to be able to convey to your customers? And then what do you need to prove that thing that you want to convey? So I think this might be a quick one for the chat because we're soon at the end, but if you could just quickly note in the chat, what is it that you want to say? And what's the proof you want to provide to your customers when you're choosing this material, with the intent that you have? And then we'll keep track of this material and use it in our takeaways, but it'd be really helpful to know. Okay, finally, I wanted to just check in with Anna. Is there any final question that you would like to make sure we get to before we just do our little wrap up for today?
I don't think there's a specific question, but I love that you're encouraging everyone in the chat to share, what we want to be able to communicate with our customers as jewelers, because I think that comes back to you know, some of the initial questions that Carla and Yao had asked of us. This question of what do we feel good about supporting, right? And I saw some discussion in the chat about, you know, it would feel good to say, oh, we're supporting artisanal mining in Ghana specifically, even if it's not from a specific mine, as with the aggregator scenario. And it seems like that's kind of where most people are landing. But yeah, I would love for everyone's feedback in the chat just to get a better gauge of everybody here.
Thanks. And I'm gonna put Yao on the spot, and I hope it's not asking something of you. You have your clear expertise in your area of work, but I have a lot of us are artists in training on this call, and as jewelers by training, we all learned about Ghanaian gold work, and were awed by the processes, the inventions in lost wax casting, these beautiful medallions. So we have this context of the art. This might have to be another conversation. We have this incredible artwork of Ghanaian goldsmiths. Obviously, there was mining going on, and now you have this international interest on the part of artists from all over the world. So, is there a place where those two are meeting? Kind of the artists working internationally with gold, Ghanaian artists that continue to work with gold, and the fact that it's such a rich place for gold. In a way, I'm like, are the traditions being kept alive at the same time where there's a feeding frenzy for gold from Ghana by everyone else? And if I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize. You can defer us to someone else, but I've been dying to ask this question, and you're here. So I'm going to run us over time because I want to go.
So that's fine. In fact, we realized sort of a decline in the jewelry sector in Ghana, but now government is trying to put in measures to improve on that. We had a number of jewelers way back years ago, but now that has gone down. We have an association of jewelers as well, who are trying to also push for us to promote the sector. The good thing about what's happening now is they're trying to combine that with responsible sourcing as well. So then they ensure that they source from a mine that is producing gold responsibly, and try to promote that as well. So I think we've been invited to a conference next week, for instance. It's called the Gold Statement. I'm sure probably if you Google, you may be able to get some more information on that. So with that, for instance, they're trying to promote responsible sourcing for jewelry in Ghana. So that's government is trying to push that as well. We realized a decline over the years, but now government is trying to put in measures to improve on that as well. So which I think is good. Yeah.
You're muted, Christina.
Has to happen at least once. I really appreciate you sharing that. We had, and I think this might be a conversation for another time, we could relook at this topic again, because we had back in 2020, now my brain will space, my gosh, from Colombia and the Chocó, there are traditional jewelry makers there too, who brought techniques from, they were originally coming from Africa, and they brought along traditional techniques that they had learned locally and from influences internationally. And the identity between the gold mining and the jewelry are linked really strongly in that particular community. And so I've just been so curious if something similar is happening in Ghana. Yeah. So to everyone, we do have to wrap up the session, and I know there are more questions coming in on the chat. I'm sorry that we're not going to get to them right now. And I did kind of a greedy thing asking my question. I apologize. It's really important for you all to know that we will not be having a living room session in December. We will be back in January, and wanted to put your attention on one particular ASM Gold project that's happening right now that many of you might be aware of. It's running through August of 2022, and it's the Fairmind 100 Challenge. So for some of you that have been really trying to figure out, I want to work with gold from these communities, I don't really know how to work with gold from these communities, the Alliance for Responsible Mining and the Fairmind certification have created a way for jewelry designers to create a collection of pieces as part of this challenge. And so it's one way to perhaps step lightly and try this out, because there is a whole supportive community around this particular initiative. So if you're not yet, looking at purchasing through a program like what we were talking about with Ghana and Solidaridad, or what Andrea is doing in Peru, or like what we talked about last month with Sahabu Safi from DRC, but you want to be participating in one of these, that might be an interesting way to do it. So we wish you a wonderful slide into 2022, and we will be back doing still the third Friday of every month, but we know we're going to shake it up a little bit. We've been doing the same kind of method of the living room, and we're going to see, how we might update it going forward in the future. But since this is our end of year, those of you that are willing and able, if you wouldn't mind turning on your video cameras, because we would like to do our photo of those that are in attendance. We like to do a little screenshot of everyone that's been here. Thank you. I see you coming on to do that. It's so exciting. And I think between our team, we're going to try to do a couple photos here. Excellent. Here comes Christina. Hi. Okay, smile again. We'll do a couple more. You're all so cute.
So are you.
No, thanks. Oh, excellent. Well, okay. We wish you all the best. Obviously, there are more meetings on these kinds of topics coming up, but not a living room session. Way to go, Anna.
Yeah, and thank you all. Happy holidays to everyone. I want to mention real quick, we have a gift coming up for y'all. So keep an eye out on our social media. We have a little responsible sourcing roadmap that we're going to be sharing with everybody. So that's our holiday gift to you. And yeah, see you all in the new year. Thank you so much to all of our guests, Carla, Yao, Andrea, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you all.
guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Warmest thoughts.
Thanks. Oh, they hopped off. Okay.